The afternoon sun slanted through my kitchen window, painting the linoleum floor in warm stripes of gold. I set down the grocery bags, rubbing my sore shoulder absently. At 67, I'd learned to expect certain aches, the twinge in my lower back when I bent too quickly, the stiffness in my fingers on cold mornings. But this pain was different. This was the bone-deep weariness of a woman who'd spent too many years carrying other people's burdens. I was just putting the milk away when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a photo of Lila, her bright smile frozen in time from last Christmas. My granddaughter, my heart. Lila, sweetheart. I answered, already smiling. Her voice came through tight and strange. Hey, Nana. That single word, Nana, usually filled me with warmth. Today it sent a chill down my spine. I knew that tone. It was the same one she'd used at 8 years old when she'd broken my favorite vase. At 16 when she'd crashed my car. The "I've done something and I'm scared to tell you" voice. My grip tightened on the counter. "What's wrong, baby?" A long pause. Then the words that would divide my life into before and after. "I don't think you should come to the wedding." The refrigerator hummed. A car honked outside. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked. Ordinary sounds in a world that had just tilted off its axis. What? My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Small and cracked, like an old radio with bad reception. Lila rushed on, her words tumbling over each other. "It's not personal, okay? It's just the venue is really particular about the aesthetic. The photographer has this whole vision, and the planner says aesthetic." The word felt foreign in my mouth, bitter as unripe persimmon. Another pause. Then softer. "You wouldn't fit in, Nana." The kitchen tiles beneath my feet might as well have turned to ice. I reached blindly for a chair, my legs suddenly unreliable. Memories flashed. Lila at 5, sticky-fingered and grinning as she helped me bake cookies. At 12, tearful after her first heartbreak, curled against my side. At 18, beaming in her graduation cap, her arms tight around my neck. 23 years of bedtime stories and bandaged knees and whispered secrets, and now I didn't fit in. "You're serious?" It wasn't a question. "Nana, please don't make this harder. It's just one day. You understand, don't you?" The milk carton sat sweating on the counter, forgotten. Through the window, I watched Mrs. Henderson from across the street tend to her roses, blissfully unaware that my world was crumbling. I wanted to scream, to demand how she could do this. To remind her of the nights I'd stayed up worrying, the bills I'd quietly paid, the dreams I'd set aside, but the words stuck in my throat like dry bread. Instead, I heard myself say, "When did I become an embarrassment to you?" Silence, then a sigh. "It's not like that. It's just, you're not exactly." Her voice trailed off, but the unspoken words hung between us like smoke. "You're not young anymore, not pretty enough. Not the right kind of grandmother for the Instagram perfect wedding you're planning." "I see," I said finally. My voice surprised me, calm, steady, like I was discussing the weather. "Nana, I think we're done here." The call ended with a quiet click. I stood there for a long moment, the phone still in my hand, staring at the half-unpacked groceries. The bananas were too green. I'd meant to pick riper ones. Lila liked them soft. A sound escaped me then. Something between a laugh and a sob. After everything, I was still thinking about her damn bananas. Slowly, methodically, I finished putting away the groceries, the eggs in their designated spot in the fridge door, the bread in the bread box, the cereal on the middle shelf where Lila could always reach it when she visited. Visited. The word landed like a punch. Would she even visit now, or was this the beginning of the end? The slow fade from her life. I sank into my favorite chair, the one with the floral cushion worn thin from years of use. The afternoon light had shifted, leaving half the room in shadow. Outside, children laughed as they rode bikes down the sidewalk. I should have been angry, should have thrown things, screamed, demanded an explanation, but all I felt was empty, hollowed out, like someone had taken a melon baller to my insides. The phone rang again. For one wild moment, I hoped it was Lila calling to say it was all a terrible joke, but the screen showed my neighbor's name, probably calling about the church potluck. I let it go to voicemail. In the silence that followed, a terrible realization settled over me. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about my place, or lack thereof, in Lila's life, in her future. And the worst part, she'd sounded relieved when she hung up. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. The tea kettle whistled the next morning, just like it had every morning for the past 30 years, but nothing felt the same. As I poured the boiling water, my hands shook slightly, making the stream wobble. I stared at the trembling surface of my tea, watching the steam rise in slow curls. Leela's words from yesterday kept replaying in my mind like a broken record. You don't fit. I carried my tea to the living room where sunlight fell across the photo wall I'd made over the years. There was Leela as a chubby-cheeked toddler sitting in my lap at the beach. Leela at 8, missing both front teeth, holding up a crayon drawing of the two of us. Leela at 16 in her prom dress, the one we'd spent 3 Saturdays hunting for at every thrift store in town. My fingers traced the edge of the last frame. It was empty. I'd been saving it for her wedding photo. The chair creaked as I sat down heavily. That's when I noticed the small wooden box on the bookshelf, the one labeled Leela's Future in my shaky handwriting. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were all the receipts. The first was from 1999, when Leela was just a baby. A withdrawal slip from the bank, $50 from my meager savings, deposited into a new account I'd named Leela's Education Fund. Back then I was working 2 jobs, mornings at the diner, afternoons at the library, just to keep food on the table after my daughter's accident. Beneath it was a faded envelope from 2007. Inside was $327 in cash, every spare dollar I could scrape together that year, saved for Leela's summer camp. I remembered eating nothing but peanut butter sandwiches for 2 months straight so she could go. The papers grew thicker as the years passed. Tuition payments for her art classes, receipts for school trips I'd secretly funded when other parents complained about costs. The hospital bill from when she broke her arm at 12, paid in full, though I'd had to sell my mother's pearl earrings to do it. At the very bottom was a bank statement from last year. $18,742.63. The wedding fund I'd been building since she turned 18, adding whatever I could spare from my Social Security checks and bookstore wages. I sat back, the weight of all those years pressing down on me. Every coffee I hadn't bought, every movie I hadn't seen, every little luxury I'd denied myself, all for this girl who now thought I was an embarrassment. A memory surfaced. Leela at 7 years old, clinging to me after a nightmare. Promise you'll never leave me, Nana, she'd whispered into my shoulder. I promise, baby, I'd said, stroking her hair. We'll always be together. Now here I sat, 20 years later, holding proof of all the ways I'd kept that promise, while she'd broken hers without a second thought. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the quiet room. Outside, a lawnmower started up somewhere down the street. Normal sounds. Normal day. I carefully returned the receipts to the box, but left it sitting on the coffee table instead of putting it back on the shelf. Something had shifted in me. For the first time in 23 years, I wondered what my life might have looked like if I'd saved for myself instead. The wedding planner's office smelled like lavender and expensive paper. I adjusted my best blouse, the light blue one Lila had said brought out my eyes, as I sat in the sleek, modern chair that seemed designed to make visitors uncomfortable. Lila hadn't told me about this meeting. I'd found out from her fiancé's mother, Linda, who'd called to ask why I wasn't responding to the group texts about floral arrangements. Lila said she'd handle telling you, Linda said, her voice tight with disapproval. Apparently she hasn't. So here I was, uninvited but unwilling to miss another part of my granddaughter's wedding planning. The door opened and Lila walked in with a tall woman in a sharp black suit, the famous wedding planner, no doubt. Lila's face went pale when she saw me. Nana, what are you? I heard you were picking out flowers today, I said evenly. Thought I'd join. The planner, call me Serena, gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Actually, we're finalizing the photography shot list right now. She spread out a large sheet of paper across the glass table. This is the seating chart and photo plan. My heart sank as I looked at the diagram. There at the very back table near the kitchen doors was a small square labeled G-Ma, not grandmother, not even my name, just G-Ma. I pointed to a cluster of tables near the front. Where's the family sitting? Serena's manicured finger tapped the front row. Parents here. Immediate family here. She glanced at Lila. We discussed keeping the, older relatives toward the back for the formal photos. It maintains the visual flow. Lila wouldn't meet my eyes. It's just for the professional shots, Nana. You'll still be in some candids. A hot pressure built behind my eyes as I stared at the chart. 23 years of raising her. And I was being filed away with the distant cousins and coworkers. Then I noticed the sticky note in the corner of the page. Serena's hurried handwriting. Check with old Re-G-Ma outfit. Might clash with color scheme. Something inside me snapped. So let me understand, I said, my voice shaking only slightly. I'm to sit in the back away from family because my age ruins your aesthetic, and now my clothes aren't good enough either. Lila's face flushed. It's not like that. We just want everything to look cohesive. What I look like isn't good enough for your pictures. The words tore out of me. After everything, Serena cleared her throat loudly. Perhaps we should take a 5-minute break, but I was already standing, my knees protesting as I pushed up from the too-low chair. I didn't look at Lila as I walked out, though I heard her call after me. The summer sun hit my face as I stepped outside, too bright, too cheerful. I fumbled for my sunglasses, only to realize my hands were trembling. A text buzzed in my pocket an hour later. Can we talk? It's not what you think. I didn't reply. Some things you can't explain away. The package arrived on a Thursday. I nearly tripped over it when coming back from my morning walk. A stiff cardboard box leaning against my front door with no return address. Inside were 3 things. A wedding invitation with gold foil lettering so shiny I could see my reflection in it. A smaller envelope labeled rehearsal dinner. A sticky note in Lila's loopy handwriting. Just in case you want to show people. I stared at the pristine cardstock in my hands. The invitation was dated for next month, addressed to me. These weren't meant to be mailed. They were pity invitations. Something to wave at curious neighbors when they ask why I wasn't at my own granddaughter's wedding. The doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was Mark, Lila's fiancé, shifting from foot to foot like a nervous teenager. Mrs. Wilkins, I come to explain why your wedding planner calls me Gmar, like I'm some senile old woman. I didn't move aside to let him in. Mark ran a hand through his hair. Look, I didn't know about any of this until yesterday. Lila told me you didn't want to come because of your arthritis. A lie so specific it stung. I'd mentioned my arthritis exactly once, when explaining why I couldn't help move boxes into their new apartment. Her parents' memorial is next week, I said instead. Is she planning to skip that because it doesn't fit her aesthetic too? Mark flinched. That's when I saw it, the flicker of something like guilt in his eyes. There's something else, he said quietly. He pulled out his phone and showed me a Pinterest board titled Dream Wedding No Old People. My breath caught. Pinned beneath floral arrangements and table settings was a screenshot of a text conversation. Lila, I just don't want any wrinkles in the photos. Is that so bad? Unknown, just tell her it's a small venue. She'll understand. Lila, ugh, but then she'll want to help with the planning. I can't deal with her old person taste. The date on the screenshot. 6 months ago. Before the engagement. Before the dress shopping. Before any of this. Mark took his phone back. I found this last night. I didn't realize. The invitation in my hand suddenly felt heavy as a brick. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This was a carefully planned exclusion. I handed Mark the box. Tell Lila she doesn't need to worry about my old person taste anymore. When he left, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply took down the empty frame from my photo wall, the one meant for her wedding picture, and placed it in the trash. Some spaces are better left empty. The lavender chiffon dress still hung in the back of my closet, its tags fluttering like surrender flags when I pushed aside the plastic covering. I'd bought it 6 months ago, the same day Leela showed me her wedding dress. "We'll look so beautiful together, Nana," she'd said, squeezing my hand as we stood in that upscale boutique. Now the dress just looked pathetic. The delicate lace sleeves seemed fussy. The empire waist suddenly looked like something a grandmother would wear, which of course was exactly what I was. I carried it outside where the evening air smelled like cut grass and impending rain. My old fire pit, unused since Leela's childhood marshmallow roasts, waited in the backyard. One by one, I brought out the items. The receipt for her $3,200 wedding dress paid from my savings. The embroidered handkerchief meant for something borrowed, every birthday card she'd ever given me signed "Love You Forever." The match hissed to life in my fingers. For a moment I hesitated. 23 years of love doesn't disappear in an instant. Then I remembered the Pinterest board. No old people. The flames took hold hungrily. The polyester tags on the dress curled like dying spider legs. Ink on the cards bubbled away until "Love You Forever" became unreadable ash. Neighbor kids playing in the next yard over squealed about the smell. Someone's mother called out, "What's burning?" "Just trash," I answered. And it was. The heat warmed my face as I watched the last corner of the handkerchief blacken. A strange lightness filled my chest, not happiness but the absence of something heavy I'd carried too long. Inside, my phone buzzed. Probably Leela, maybe Mark again. I didn't check. Instead, I sat on the back steps as twilight fell, breathing in wood smoke and my own quiet liberation. The dress was gone. The fantasy was gone. For the first time in decades, neither of us owed the other anything. The certified mail envelope looked innocuous lying on my doormat, just another piece of the mundane paperwork that comes with being old. But the embossed letterhead of Henderson and Lowe family law made my coffee turn to acid in my stomach. Inside was a single paragraph of carefully worded legalese that boiled down to Lila Wilkins formally requests the release of $18,742.63 from the joint wedding fund account by Friday. I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that startled my cat off the windowsill. There was no joint account. Every penny in that fund had come from my Social Security checks deposited into an account with only my name on it. My hands shook as I dialed the number at the bottom of the letter. A receptionist answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Wilkins," the lawyer said when he came on the line, his voice slick with false sympathy. "I understand this is difficult, but my client has proof you verbally promised these funds for her wedding. Did she also tell you she uninvited me because I'm too old for her photographs?" I asked. A pause. That's not relevant to the financial matter. The clock on my wall ticked 3 loud seconds before I responded. "Tell Lila she's welcome to try taking me to court. I still have the bank statements and the Pinterest screenshots." I hung up before he could reply. That afternoon, I did 2 things: went to the bank and transferred every cent of the wedding fund into a new account, hired my own lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Gloria who snorted when she saw Lila's demand letter. "Let me guess," Gloria said, adjusting her glasses. "Granddaughter got greedy after grandma stopped being useful." I nodded. Gloria slid a form across her desk. "Sign this. It revokes any previous informal promises and formally disinherits her unless you say otherwise." The pen felt heavy in my hand. For a fleeting moment I saw toddler Lila blowing dandelion fluff in my backyard, her giggles floating on the summer air. Then I signed. The courthouse smelled like lemon polish and stale coffee. I sat at the defendant's table in my best navy dress, the same one I'd worn to Lila's high school graduation, while Gloria shuffled papers beside me. Lila arrived 15 minutes late in oversized sunglasses, her new husband Mark trailing behind, looking miserable. She'd done something different with her hair, expensive highlights that made her look like a stranger. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away. The judge, a weary-looking woman with silver streaks in her hair, peered over her glasses as Lila's lawyer began. "Your Honor, my client was promised these funds for her wedding." "By whom?" Gloria interrupted. "A verbal agreement with Mrs. Wilkins." "Your Honor," Gloria said, sliding a stack of bank statements across the table. "These clearly show the account in question was solely in my client's name. There was no joint ownership, no signed agreement." The judge examined the papers while Lila's lawyer coughed. We have text messages showing Mrs. Wilkins' intent. Gloria produced an envelope. We have something better. Screenshots of the defendant's granddaughter discussing her plan to exclude my client from the wedding due to, she made air quotes, old people ruining the aesthetic. Lila's face went white. Mark put his head in his hands. The judge's lips thinned as she reviewed the evidence. When she finally spoke, her voice could have frozen hell. Miss Wilkins, you're alleging financial abuse while admitting you banned your grandmother from your wedding for being too old? Lila opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The gavel came down with a crack. Case dismissed with prejudice. Mrs. Wilkins is awarded legal fees. As we stood to leave, Lila grabbed my arm. Nana, please. I removed her hand gently. You made your choice, sweetheart. The pet name tasted like ash. Enjoy your wedding photos. Walking away, I realized something remarkable. I wasn't crying. The hollow ache in my chest had finally scabbed over. Outside, the sun was shining. Gloria squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. I will be. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, just as the first snow of winter dusted my garden. The subject line read, I miss you. I let it sit unopened while I made tea, watching the steam curl toward the window where frost painted delicate patterns on the glass. When I finally clicked it, the message was shorter than I expected. Nana, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'd like to try explaining if you'll let me. Luke left me. Turns out he didn't like being married to someone who abandons family. I think I finally understand what I threw away. Leela, the cursor blinked mockingly as I reread the words. Outside, a cardinal landed on the frozen bird bath, a splash of red against all that white. I closed the laptop. The empty frame from my photo wall now held a different picture. One I'd taken last month at the community center art show, where my first pottery piece, a lopsided but earnest bowl, had earned a red ribbon. In the photo, my neighbor, Mrs. Petrovsky, and I were laughing, our arms slung around each other's shoulders, flowers still dusting our aprons from the baking class we'd started taking. My phone buzzed. Another email. I drove by the house yesterday. The blue hydrangeas out front are still there. Remember how we planted those when I was 6? You said they'd grow as tall as me someday. I carried my tea to the window. The hydrangeas stood bare now, their skeletal branches wearing caps of snow. But come summer, they'd bloom again, whether Leela saw them or not. The house creaked around me, full of comforting sounds, the radiator's gentle hiss, the cat purring on the armchair, the wind chimes singing on the porch. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like space, space I'd filled with painting classes and library volunteer shifts, and Tuesday night card games with friends who never once asked if I was too old to join them. I typed a single line in reply. I hope you find peace, Leela. Then I deleted the draft. Some things didn't need to be said. Some silences didn't need to be broken. The cardinal flew away as I picked up my paintbrush. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering everything in a clean, white, quiet,